Hey there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Sam and John's Book Club Rhythm of War Edition. Second episode. And man, Sam, it feels like it's been a long time since we recorded an episode, even though...
Yeah, how long has it been? It feels like ages.
I mean, did we do our last one on time? Is that why?
I think we did. I think we did that one on Tuesday when normally we put them off until Friday. Tuesday is our scheduled day.
Right, yeah. And I think that I think that Tuesdays will work, and then I said that, right? And then the next Tuesday, you were like, okay, great, Tuesdays it is. And then the next day, you had a conflict. And then the next one after that, I had a last-second conflict. And so maybe now it'll work, but I don't know. Maybe the universe is conspiring.
I still generally prefer Tuesdays to Fridays because I like
same.
hanging out with everyone online on Fridays, you know?
Yeah, me too.
But that's the thing, is that, like, the only thing I ever have scheduled on Fridays is hanging out with people on Discord, so, like... It's never a problem to do them on Friday. All right, whatever. Welcome to the book club.
Hey, everybody.
Rhythm of War is just blowing my mind over here, guys.
Oh, it's great.
I'm so excited by it all the time, and I can't wait to keep reading it. This time we read chapters 7 through 13, and next time we're going to be finishing up part 1, which I am dying to do.
Yes.
So let's discuss an old bookie wookie.
Well, let's shout.
And please don't stop listening to the podcast just because I said bookie wookie.
I think so they would have been deterred long ago.
Let's talk epigraphs, John.
Yeah.
Epigraphs are fun this time. Epigraphs are talking about the exact mechanics of fabrials.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it.
Specifically, in this part where we've been reading, it's all about how different metals interact with the gemstones in fabrials.
Which is very exciting from a Mistborn standpoint of allomancy. Because it's got some interesting... stuff there. Sorry, my cat is very interested in this beer. If she smells it enough, she will not be. Oh.
Yeah, I see her tail's up in your camera there.
Never mind, she's licking the thing. Maybe she likes beer.
All right, so right off, first epigraph, zinc and brass allow you to control expression strength in fabrials.
Right.
And that's interesting because these happen to be the metals for soothing and rioting emotions in Mistborn, right?
Yeah.
So I read this and I was like, I wonder if all of them kind of mimic what they do in Mistborn to gems. And I guess we'll find out as we continue reading.
Yeah. It's kind of fun because back in, I guess kind of all the books so far, maybe with the exclusion of Way of Kings, like, if I saw the what are they called? Epigraphs? I saw if they were like really big deal important ones like the letters, right? Then I just wouldn't read them until we read them all together on the podcast. And otherwise, they were kind of like nothing burgers, like the weird intro to Oathbringer. So I just didn't read them at all. But these ones, I'm like, oh boy, more fabrial science.
Exactly. I think for a lot of the epigraphs, we can kind of skip some and do, whatever. But with these ones, I've been reading them all, and I have notes, I think, on pretty much all of them.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
All right, so last time when we left off, Shallan had been infiltrating the Sons of Honor, and she is now actually up in there, and she has a conversation with Ile Sadius. Who is like a husk of the woman she once was.
Which is really saying something.
Yeah. So, we learn that High Princes Thanadal and Vama, who we had heard mentioned back in Book 1 mainly, right?
Yep.
Have at this point been killed by the Ghostbloods. That happened during the time skip, I guess.
Yeah. That was also my guess.
And that's just to be noted. Ile says to Shallan that you just watch Restaris. Restairs will be next. Yeah. And at this point, we don't really know who Restaris is, which I think is how I'm going to keep saying it. Restaris? I'm going to say Restaris.
Restaris sounds good to me.
All right. Ile is like, I'm going to die. You're gonna kill me. Someone's going to kill me. I don't know. And Shallan's like, well,
she's
no.
Totally accepts
I'm not going to kill you if you want to die, right? That would be lame. Mm-hmm. So it's imprison her instead. And then while they're trying to bring Ile away... she gets poisoned to death.
Yep. Foams at the mouth. Blech. But before dying, she kind of gives a little bit of a hint, a little hint to Shallan.
Yep. She says, I've been getting spied on by the Ghostbloods, but I've been doing some counter-spying.
Right. I've got some recon, and I want you to find it so that the Ghostbloods don't find it, which is kind of a weird middle ground for Shallan. Better she find it than the average Ghostblood, I guess.
Yeah, Shallan's down to find it though, so she does do that. But first, we go back to Kaladin. Oh, Elay dies. Yep, rest in peace.
Yep.
We go back to Kaladin. He is back in Hearthstone still at this point, fighting various, fused and whatnot.
Bad guys.
And the fused also have Fabrials. It turns out that run on Void Light, and one is activated to suck away Kaladin's powers temporarily.
Yeah. This is very spooky.
It's
a good thing that Kaladin was such a good soldier to begin with. That
I know,
he
yeah.
doesn't need his Stormlight powers to be awesome.
Powers be damned. Kaladin freaking wins a 1v5.
Yeah, I love that scene where they drain the Stormlight, and he was like, "Yeah, they all got kind of more lax. They're like, oh, this will be easy," but they didn't know who they were dealing with. I don't remember exactly what he said.
Exactly. Well, one of them had a line that was like, "You Radiants are all the same. Take your Stormlight away, and you're nothing." And Kaladin's like, "Well, actually," and just like.
I feel like during the movie that would the camera would be on him, and he would be like, "Without your Stormlight, you're."
Yeah, so he takes. That was dope. But all right, but the thing is that if the fused, if the Voidbringers have this one Void Light Fabrial, they probably have others. So keep an eye out, right?
Right. Watch your back.
Also, Kaladin didn't pick up the Void Light Fabrial right away, and I was like, oh my god, they're gonna take the Void Light Fabrial, right? And bring it and give it and give it and
give
then
it
they
to
did.
Navani.
Okay,
yeah, they did.
good.
Yeah.
But it took them a second. I got nervous.
Right.
All right, moving on. That's all I have for chapter 7. Chapter 8. Okay, next little epigraph. Bronze can create a warning fabrial, alerting one to objects or entities nearby. And do you remember what Bronze does in Mistborn, John?
No.
It lets you detect nearby allomancy use.
Oh, right. I was thinking of copper blocks it, and I was like, what's the opposite of copper? What is the power? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so Bronze, again, when you look at this, an incredible parallel between what the metal does in Rosharan's system and the Scadrian system.
Yeah, it's been fun to see all of the metals sort of explained a little bit past just aluminum,
Yeah. Much like Elokar, Roshan was just kind of maybe having a little bit of a redemption arc. He started kind of caring about his people, maybe being a little bit less bad.
Sure was.
Luckily for us, we have a character who loves killing people right before they start doing better.
Yeah. I was like, oh god, it annoyed me so much, and I was thinking about this the other day because up to now, right, you had read all the books previously, and now we're reading it at the same pace, which is a lot of fun. And I was thinking back to, I think it was the last episode where you're like, I kind of like Rashon now, right? And then he dies in this section. I was like, Sam was setting me up for that. I was like, oh wait, no, he just didn't know. He set us both up.
I think you
probably
think I'm setting you up for stuff way more.
No. I didn't really think you were, but I had that weird subconscious thought, and I was like, wait, he couldn't have done that.
Yeah, I'm literally reading at the same pace you are.
Yeah, I was like, you set us both up for this kind of sad thing.
So Moash and Kaladin have a nice long heart-to-heart where Moash gets pretty darn closer than I ever would have expected, to just talking Kaladin into killing himself.
Yeah, pretty much. It was kind of it was weird to me how, both that was his point of that conversation, and also, how convinced Kaladin was by it.
Yeah, that's just
very
what
freaky.
Moash was going for, and it was working. All right, so the thing is that conversation all made me kind of uncomfortable, of course, because talking about suicide is all... It's kind of taboo, right? Mm-hmm. And there's this whole culture on the internet of joking about it, but that's so far removed. I don't know. Listening to two people have a conversation where one person's like, "Kill yourself, asshole," and the other guy's like, "Oh man, maybe I should." It made me uncomfortable.
Yeah, no, it was. I did not enjoy it.
Yeah. Okay. Meanwhile, Renarin shows up and does something that we've kind of seen happen a couple of times in Brandon Sanderson books, where. Light shines through a doorway, and suddenly Moash sees almost a vision of the person he could have been. Right?
Yeah.
And this reminds me of another certain type of allomancy from Mistborn.
Oh, sure.
Which, this one's kind of spoilersy. The ones we've talked about so far are all just, basic world mechanics.
Right.
But, but you know what I'm talking about, and I think probably many listeners know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Also, Shallan, of course, has had a couple of times where she's kind of shown people what they could have been through drawings and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
So this is just a recurring theme, and Renard is doing it, and that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Kaladin has a line where he says, if there was a deity, it watched him from within that light.
Yeah.
And then immediately afterwards, Renarin steps out of the light.
Yeah.
Right? And this leads me to a question.
Mm-hmm.
Why is Renarin a hole in Odium's vision?
Yeah.
And could this line about a deity being within that light be maybe a little bit more literal?
Okay. Yeah.
It kind of sounds like just a thing Kaladin said, right? But I read this and I'm like, well, because like something about Renarin unrelated to the fact that he has this corrupted spren, right? Something from his birth.
Super weird.
There is something about him, something in his past that has made him like special in a really like crazy, unique way, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like at this point, we know a Dawn Shard, and the Dawn Shard is not a hole in Odium's vision, right?
Yeah.
Other people, we learn in later chapters, right, that another person is likely to bind a corrupted spren, and they're not a hole in Odium's vision, right? Like based on this conversation we've seen, it's like just Renarin,
right? Which is so
what about him causes this?
Weird, yeah. I love that. Like, rather than answering any questions about Renarin, we're just piling more mysteries on him.
Yeah.
It is a whack.
Okay. Either way, Renarin is cool. Renarin is cool now. I'll start admitting that like Renarin is actually.
All right. Cool. Glad we've made it to this point.
Well, in the past, I've always been able to say like, oh, this is like what the first useful thing he's done in like a book, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now the proximity of his useful things to one another are actually they're getting closer,
right?
And
yeah.
I'm like, okay, well,
the gap's closing a little bit.
Yeah. Okay, and that's all I have to say about that chapter. So Moash skedaddles, and
yep.
Yeah. Okay.
And that is that.
Next epigraph, chapter 9, we learn that pewter augments, which makes perfect sense.
And I remember back when I was reading Mistborn having a conversation with everybody saying if you could just burn one metal, what would it be? And I think I picked pewter.
Oh, yeah. I might go with tin. Wait, would I? No, because like I don't need to spy on people.
Yeah, I like pewter just because like having energy all the time sounds great. And I know you can do kind of like what Kaladin does with his like Stormlight Adderall, right? And it can get out of control. And people with pewter do that too. So that would be like a temptation I'd have to avoid. But otherwise, like it just seems pretty rad.
Yeah. We learned that soulcasters, like the objects, the super strong fabrials, manifest as small, unresponsive spren in Shadesmar.
Mm-hmm. Which is
interesting.
Super weird, yeah. They're just like, they just don't really get how they work. Like,
yeah.
They're just
like
these weird...
if you look at where any fabrial is in Shadesmar, right?
Mm-hmm.
That fabrial has a little spren trapped in it. Do you see that spren in Shadesmar? Or is this something that's unique to soulcasters?
I think that you see them in Shadesmar, but they're not... Like, the soulcasters sort of resemble dead shard blades, it sounds like, a little bit.
Yeah, but, like, tiny, small, right? It's I imagine, like, little, like maybe as big a person's head sort of size. Which, I mean, we weren't given specific information, but that's just in my...
Right, same. And I think that, maybe that's what's happening with regular fabrials. They're just little regular alive spren, but they can't... Like, they're sort of locked in to their place relative to how they're being used in the fabrial.
Yeah, I don't know. All right.
Yeah, it's a little
I commented in the past about how, like, it seems kind of janky that people are just, like, imprisoning all these spren.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess it's not a big deal because the Stormfather's not upset about it. Syl's not upset about it.
Yeah, that was
a very, boom.
Very well timed on that mention of wondering about that.
We finally run into somebody who is, in fact, upset about it.
Right, and this to me was, like, almost the most interesting thing in this whole section. Was just like the spooky letter given to Navani, like, stop imprisoning spren or you're going to pay for it. And I was like, oh. And she's like, well, it's like using trolls to pull carts. And they're like, I'm clearly already offended by this. Don't make this worse.
Yeah, and is the person writing to her a spren, do you think?
I mean, it seems...
Or is it just a spren rights activist?
Right, it's Axes. No, I don't think so. But
that's actually not an insane theory.
Right, like, it's like it's possible. He's the most spren-related entity besides them.
He likes spren.
Right. I think it is probably a spren. That seems like the simplest answer anyway.
Yeah, that's my guess right now. Also.
Yeah.
All right, we go back to Shallan. She's hanging out, and we learn that she actually has a fourth persona outside of just Radiant and Veil and herself, which is kind of. It's not fully formed. It's not really a persona yet, but it's like
Right.
It's coming up on being one.
Right, and it's called the Formless. And when
Yep.
something has a name that spooky, it can't be good, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you get the feeling sort of that if Shallan ever actually like becomes formless, you know, she's probably just gonna go into the fetal position and be unable to come back or something like that. It's gonna be bad.
Something bad, yeah. And so
or maybe it'll be like Dark Shallan and she'll be all dark gray skin with red eyes, and then real Shallan's gonna have to fight her.
Right. I think we talked about this in the first episode, but it's like it's so weird during the time skip, right? We basically got to this point where Shallan is like all three of her personalities, Shallan, Veil, and Radiant. And like she's limited it to those three. Everybody gets that that's sort of the situation. She has like color-coded hair, so you know which one you're talking to. And everybody's just like enabling it, and she's like, I'm functional now, it's fine. And you know for a fact she's not. And I can't tell if she's like getting worse, like, because she's been in worse spots than this. Yeah. But it's like, it's just such an uncomfortable like landing spot we've ended at.
I mean, the fact is that she is functional, and it's like, it's not even that everyone's just cool with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, even her own personas are concerned about Shallan, right? Adolin is clearly concerned about Shallan. He just doesn't know how to help, right?
Yeah. No, yeah, by cool with it, I mean, like, everybody goes along with it, right?
Which is like, they don't know what to do. I mean, what do you do? Say, you better stop doing this, or I'm just not going to hang out with you anymore.
Right, yeah.
Like, that's not going to help, right?
No, of course not, yeah. I mean, it is essentially a mental illness in a fantasy universe, which is just such a strange, like...
Well, I mean, everyone has a mental illness in this fantasy universe, right? Which is kind of, I mean, Kaladin has, you know, like, severe, what I'm sure would be diagnosed depression, right?
Yeah.
We have a bunch of people struggling with addiction in different forms, right?
Yeah.
We have, you know, we have a whole slew of...
Right. A deluge.
Kind of real world issues.
Yeah.
All right. Shallan starts translating a notebook she was able to find based on the clue that ELA had given her, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a couple of words come up. Nalathis, Skadariel, Taldane.
Mm-hmm.
Did you recognize these, John, when they first came up?
No, they sounded familiar, but I didn't know what they were.
Skadriel is the planet where Mistborn takes place.
Yep. Yeah, I sense I was like, oh, wait a minute.
Nalthis is Warbreaker.
Yeah.
And Taldane is where the White Sand graphic novels take place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, oh man, like I know that Stormlight is like the magnum opus of Brandon Sanderson, right? It's like the story that ties the whole Cosmere together, more or less. And I'm sure that Dragonsteel will be more of a like, here's what happened before all the crazy stuff went down.
Yeah, I don't know.
But it's just so exciting to like get insight into all of the planet hopping and the actual like full story arc of the Cosmere itself. Like I feel like reading this series, I'm like, this is everything Brendan Sanderson ever wanted to do, you know?
Yeah, I am really excited to start having, like, it's going to be crossover episodes, right?
Yeah, right.
Like, we're going to start seeing a bunch of characters, even more than we've already seen from other worlds, and it's going to be very exciting.
For sure, yeah.
Okay. Another name comes down, Thydakar is the person who leads the Ghostbloods?
I think so, yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
And Shallan is having this conversation with Adolin about the Ghostbloods, and she had originally intended to tell him that she was like working with them, right?
Yeah.
But then eventually she doesn't, and it's just a line that's kind of like, oh wow, I guess I never did say it outright. Oh well, and she just doesn't say it, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh geez,
boy.
Shallan. Don't you know that healthy relationships are built on a foundation of trust? And that's my note. I wrote down.
One step forward, two steps back.
Because, I mean, the thing is that once you know, like, up to this point, it would have been found out that she was a part of the Ghostbloods. If Aelin found it out without her telling him, you know, he might have been upset, but she could have, I don't know, said, like, well, like, it didn't really come up per se. I know that's a lame excuse, but like what I was doing was like helpful in the long run and just trust me. But like now, the fact that she had such a good opportunity to tell him about it and she didn't.
Yeah.
Now it seems like she's just digging herself a hole, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we'll see. All right, that's all I have to say for that chapter.
Yep.
10. Tin diminishes nearby attributes such as pain. And this one I don't really get.
Yeah,
Because tin
this one
enhances
makes sense.
senses.
Yeah. Because, like, I mean, it makes sense in that it's the, like, you know, the opposite of pewter, and so it would diminish, whereas pewter enhances, but it doesn't make a lot of sense from, like, an allomantic sense.
Yeah, I don't know. Also, we learned that steel and iron change polarity. Oh, like pushing and pulling almost. That's so wacky.
Whoa.
All right, there's another honor spren who doesn't have a person. They did have a person, but they don't anymore because they died.
Yep. And he's
Named
like an old dude.
Yun-Fa.
Yeah.
And Yun-Fa is kind of funny, and I enjoy his conversation with Kaladin because it's this whole thing where he's like, you know, he's like being coy. He's like playing hard to get, but it's all like a little bit of a game, you know.
Right.
Like he just wants Kaladin to like be like, this is what you're gonna do, and I'm not gonna hear any ifs, ands, or buts about it, Mister. And like that's what Yun-Fa wants, right?
Yeah.
And it was just funny, just a funny little conversation.
Yeah, so this Yun-Fa guy, he's going to go bond with Renarin per Kaladin's orders, which I am stoked about. Cause Renarin,
Yeah, that's going to be dope.
I mean, I was like, are we ever going to be, like, hear about him again, you know? I mean, part of his character was the fact that everybody ignores him, and we never do hear about him, so...
Yeah.
But, yeah, it'll be exciting to see if he can make a Knight Radiant out of this little Spren situation.
There was some mention about how, like, oh yeah, we're still getting information from the two heralds, right? Which is presumably Ash and Talon, who it sounds like have stuck around and are aiding the Knights Radiant, right, for the last year, probably.
Yeah, which is sicko mode.
And the fact that they said the two heralds were helping does mean that Talon is probably spending a fair amount of time cognizant, right?
Yeah.
Which is wonderful.
Yeah, per your theory.
Yeah. All right, Kaladin shows up and has a talk with Dalinar, and Dalinar comes swinging out of left field. This really caught me off guard.
Yeah,
right?
same. I didn't expect it.
Dalinar says to Kaladin that he is removing him from duty, from combat duty, right? And
which, like,
it just came out, and it was pretty final, and Kaladin tried fighting it, right? But listening to Kaladin and Dalinar talk, right, where Kaladin's like, You're just like the rest of them. You were supposed to be different, right? And Dalinar is like, he was just raising an eyebrow, just waiting for Kaladin to continue, right? Like, Kaladin's like, you're just throwing me away. And Dalinar's like, wait. Why was I different? Come again? And Kaladin's like, because you care about your men. And Dalinar's like, you know, just like, and the way they're talking, it's just like, Dalinar makes Kaladin feel like a little kid almost.
Yeah, yep.
You know?
I mean, he says
because Dalinar is he's just such a rock, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And compared to him, Kaladin is just like a really, you know, emotional,
dumb baby,
angsty teen,
yeah,
right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, this surprised me. I mean, it makes sense, like, it's kind of been not foreshadowed exactly, but maybe it's not as big of a surprise given that through the book thus far, everybody's checking in on Kaladin. He's never sleeping, you know. He's clearly, like, burning out a little bit. So
freezing up in battle, yeah. I mean,
it makes a lot of sense that he should probably, you know, take a chill. And when Dalinar says this, you know, I had the same thought as Kaladin, where he's like, oh, he's just giving me a break, and I can go back in once I'm better, right? And Dalinar was like, well, yeah, that's possible.
Yeah, if you get better, sure. You know?
Right, but even Kaladin said he was like, possible, but not likely. And that was also
like, nobody gets better from, what did he call it, battle fatigue?
Yeah.
Or whatever.
And I also got that impression that it was possible, but not likely.
Yeah, I mean, it seems pretty final. So, I mean, and Dalinar is saying, you know, like, it's not your combat prowess that has made me keep you around, right? It's your passion, right? And all this. And, like, there are still definitely ways you can be useful here. And through this, Kaladin is saying, like, oh, he's just saying that because we know I'm useless because I'm not even going to fight anymore. He's just trying to make me feel better. And I'm like, no, Kaladin, I think probably...
What do you
I'm pretty
mean?
sure he has stuff that you can do to help. But Kaladin is just being immature about it. And, like, this just genuinely is in Kaladin's best interest, it seems, right?
Yeah, no. And Kaladin, he has a little bit of a... This is a down on the roller coaster that we're very used to with Kaladin, so...
Yes.
Well, I'm sure we'll see him pull out of it, but it's always a bummer.
Yeah, so Kaladin's really not taking it well, and that is that. And chapter 11 now.
Yep.
So we learned that iron attracts things. Like, we know about a fabric that pulls in smoke, right? And that's made with iron.
Yep.
This epigraph goes on to read, but we don't know what metal repels. And I'm like, well, it's steel, dummy.
Yeah.
Just read Mistborn.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. So this is a chapter from Venli's perspective. Excited for her to be a recurring viewpoint.
Yeah, and Venli has become like the voice of Lady Leshwi
She's
to pass her will on to unworthy chumps.
Yeah, her envoy form, really helps her to understand like pretty much all forms of communication, even like completely non-verbal, I guess, or only partially verbal, which is how Leshwi sort of communicates.
Yeah, Leshwi like does a little hum, and Venli is like, yeah, she wants you to go sweep up the left-east wing of the North Hall. Like she,
Right.
she like translate this incredibly precisely.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so there are some lines in here that were of interest. There was a line about how Thunderclast and Unmade are souls more like Spren than people.
Mm-hmm.
This was interesting to me. Because if you're saying they're more like Spren than people, that's not something you'd say about a Spren, right?
Right.
A Spren's not like a Spren, it is a Spren.
It is a Spren, yeah. Uh-huh.
Which makes it sound like the Unmade, which up to this point we have always referred to as very powerful Spren.
Right.
May not be Spren after all.
Yeah, might be some weird... I mean, they fit into the hierarchy of the listeners, which goes like what? It was like listener, and then something above listener, I don't remember, and then the fused, and then the regals, and then the Thunderclass and Unmade in that weird, like, ambiguous category.
Yeah. So that's kind of, I don't know, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. A little whack.
Also, we know that Venli can just look into Shadesmar at will. She, like, blurs her vision or whatever, and suddenly she can just see Shadesmar in the real world all at once.
I was like, when did that happen?
We learned that the cool guy who attacked Kaladin is called Lysian, the Pursuer.
Right, which makes a lot of sense. He is super cool.
Also, we learned that instead of having orders of Knights Radiant, the Fused call each of their groups brands.
Yeah.
Brands. So the Heavenly ones are a brand, and and this Lysian, the Pursuer guy, is a brand. And it makes me wonder, is he the only one of his brand or something?
Right.
He sounded kind of unique.
Yeah, that's what it sounded like. I mean, he was unique for... Yeah, I mean, he as a personality is unique, but is it because of his, like, personality, or is it because he's the only one that has the weird little red light power, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah, teleporty stuff.
If that's the case, like, thank goodness, because that seems very powerful.
Indeed. Lady Leshwi wants to bring somebody in to make them clothes, and oh, look at this, it's Yokska. It's Adelin's tailor is the one they bring.
Right.
And that was kind of interesting. That was just, a fun little throwback.
Right, and Leshwi was like a human guffaw.
Blech.
And Venli's like, well, listeners aren't as good at clothes, and Leshwi was like, I don't care. And that was kind of weird. Because, like, we know that Leshwi sort of, like, not respects humans, right? But she's more interested in them than your average fused.
Yeah, Leshwi seems like about the coolest fused that exists, by my estimation.
Yeah, definitely.
Alright, we learned that Venli can use either type of light. She can use Stormlight or Void Light.
Right, that seems very useful.
Also, Leshwi had a line where she was like, let's see. Venli was like, did you get a chance to kill him? Right? Talking about Kaladin.
Yeah. And
Leshwi is like, no, unfortunately, I don't think I'll get the chance to fight him again. Right. He killed Lysian, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this kind of makes it sound like for some reason the fact that Kaladin killed Lysian is now like a death sentence for Kaladin. Right. That's kind of how I interpret it. Because why else would killing him mean that she would never be able to fight Kaladin again?
Right, because like the only other reason would be she knows he's been removed from duty, which doesn't make any sense, right?
That doesn't make... Yeah, I don't know how she'd know that.
Yeah, so I was like... Yeah, I was thinking that it must not mean that, and it must mean that she... Like, she's not afraid of him because he killed, like, this crazy notable guy. So, is it just because the notable guy is, like, more pissed now and he's going to kill Kaladin? Like, what's the situation?
that's kind of what I expect, is that Kaladin's going to get hunted down by this dude. I mean,
Yeah.
he's called the Pursuer, right?
Right.
It's in his name.
Yeah.
So that's my guess, that he's going to hunt Kaladin down now.
Yeah, wouldn't surprise me. So maybe Kaladin will get a chance to fight after all.
Yeah. All right, so Venli's powers are she can look into Shadesmar and she can mold stone. So she's a will shaper for sure, right?
Yep.
Also, there are fused who can imitate others, and these are called like those of masks or something like that. So we already saw these people. This was the person who snuck into the vault to steal the ruby from Risen way back when, right?
Yep.
This is their equivalent to Lightweavers, and they're, I don't know, interesting. Also, we learned that the different forms of the Parshendi, even like not the forms of power, just the normal forms, do involve them binding Spren.
Right.
And we learned, just as an example, that work form is achieved by binding a gravitation Spren.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting. I mean, I guess we've sort of kind of known that's how it works, but, this was more explicit than we've ever read it before.
Also, we know that Venli could fully travel to Shadesmar if she wanted to, as opposed to just looking into it. But then it seems like she'd have to come back through a perpendicularity. She can't just come back at will, was kind of how I interpreted it.
Yep, that's was my impression as well.
Which would happen with Yasna, right? Yasna, when she fully traveled there, she wasn't able to come back easy peasy.
Right, had a real tough time with it.
All right, Adolin. So Kaladin is up in his room, chapter 12.
Yep.
Kaladin's up in his room being really down on himself and contemplating suicide and whatnot. And Adolin shows up and says, "We have got to get you out of being alone in your room, or you might kill yourself. Come with me." And Kaladin's like, "You jerk, I don't want to." And Adolin says, "Shut up," and they go, and it's fun. And Kaladin is happy about it after he actually gets out.
Right, they go.
Which is often how it is. I find that, outside of the realm of depression, just like, sometimes you just want to stay home for the evening, right? Mm-hmm. But normally, for me, when I actually get out and do something, I'm happy I did.
Yeah.
Right.
Same.
So Kaladin's having a little bit of that.
I think that I am definitely more introverted than extroverted for sure. Because I do for sure need some time to myself to recharge as the, sort of way of figuring that out always goes. But yeah, I agree that getting out and doing stuff with people is fun.
So they go down to a bar with Shallan, except she's actually Vale this time.
Yep.
And and it's one of the employee at the bars is getting married. It's their wedding party or something.
Yep. Yeah.
Right? And Rock is there, and there's some line about Rock not really being a squire, but not really being a radiant either. And I'm like, well, what is he? I don't know. And Kaladin says to Adolin that hey buddy, you could pretty much become a Knight Radiant probably.
Right, no sweat.
But the Spren don't like people who are carrying around old dead Shardblades, so just toss that one out, and you're basically probably a Radiant.
Yeah.
And Adolin gets right up in his face, and he says, "I am not getting rid of Maya, right? I will kill you. Don't you dare suggest that." Right. I'm making it a little bit more intense than he was.
Right, but he was dead set.
He is dead set. He is serious. He is not getting rid of Maya, and I just really like Adolin.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, Adolin
this whole chapter was did we place Adolin too high?
Mm-hmm.
No. Adolin, right, where we put him in the tier list. Oh gosh.
It's funny because we go back to Way of Kings where the Sun and the Moon were Dalinar and Kaladin, right? Mm-hmm. They're two great characters, and we're Adolin. Oh my gosh, he just bugs me all the time. He's the worst.
Back in book 1, he was annoying, and so was Shallan. Honestly, I was never interested to go check in Shallan.
Right,
but now there's a lot of characters, and I really like just a bunch of them. Right,
and I'm just Adolin might be just my favorite character outside of Dalinar.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Dalinar is he's too perfect. You can't dislike him. He can't not be your favorite. But he's you watch a movie, right? And seldom is the main character your favorite character, right? And I feel like Dalinar is kind of the main character in that sort of sense. So,
Anyway. All right. So, Rock has been talking about how. Well, I guess first we heard it from Cord, right? That he's gonna end up going back to the Horneater Peaks to
receive his judgment.
Receive judgment, for the killing Amaram, even though he's not supposed to be a combatant.
Mm-hmm.
And he is just now finally actually doing that. He is leaving as of this chapter. It sounds like.
Yep, and And he made it sound like that he maybe just never see Kaladin again, and his whole time with Bridge 4 is basically done. And
No, exactly. Rock's words were like, "I will not see any of you again. Maybe in the next life." Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
And I was so sad.
that can't be right, though. Is what I'm
No,
thinking.
no, there's no way it's true.
There's
but I
no
was
way
sad
Rock
that they
just
think
vanishes
it's
from
true.
the why
Yeah.
Brandon Sanderson would be crazy to make Rock just vanish from the series,
Yeah,
right?
no,
That
there's
doesn't
no
make any sense.
I mean, we know
So-
that people are going to go to the Horn-Eater Peaks for one reason or another at some point. So
My guess is that we're not going to see Rock for a hot minute, and if we do, it's probably going to be from his perspective, just like a chapter where he's not with any other characters we know, right?
yeah, I'd believe that.
But I mean, surely somewhere down the road he has
Yeah.
got to come back, right?
Right. Well, he's going to the Horn-Eater Peaks, and the Horn-Eater Peaks are way too important to never show up in the series, too.
Yeah, and Rock is talking about a god, in this case Hoyd, right? Wit.
Mm-hmm.
And he says the line to Kaladin, "You should not have lost his flute."
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, yeah, the flute, reference the flute. 'Cause
Right, yeah.
It really seemed like Brandon Sanderson forgot about it for a while there.
Right, yeah. Like, why was... First of all, how did Kaladin lose that, right?
Yeah.
I don't even care if you know that
He
Hoyd is
must
important
have
or
just
not,
left it behind when they moved out of the Bridge 4 barracks, right?
which just does not make sense to me. But yeah, we'll see what comes of that.
Okay, so... Oh, yeah, though, in this chapter, I don't know, it was kind of fun. It was interesting seeing Vale's relationship with Adolin. Not Shallan's, but Vale's, right? Through Kaladin's eyes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because they're like... It's like this weird relationship where, like, they're married, kind of, but when Shallan is Vale, they're like bros, and Adolin, you know, he's like got his arm up on the bench, but not like around Vale, just like they're comfortable, right? And when
Yeah.
Vale has to like get out of the booth, she kind of like, you know, like slides, like kind of almost flirty, right?
Right.
But then she goes off and just gambles, and Adolin's like, oh gee, you know, and it's like,
It's really
what?
weird.
You know, yeah, it's so
Yeah.
bizarre, but it's kind of fun. Like I enjoyed reading it.
Yeah. It makes for a fun thing.
Yeah. Okay, chapter 13. So, Shallan's got some bonus memories in her past, all right? Which sound like these are somehow going to be even worse than the memories she's already revealed to us, which just doesn't even make sense. That doesn't sound possible.
Seriously.
And these bonus memories she has have to be from before she killed her mother when she was 11, right?
Right. Yeah, because that was sort of where it was more or less the starting point for her flashbacks in Words of Radiance.
Here's the thing, John.
Yeah.
At that point, she could already summon Pattern as a Shardblade.
Check.
Windrunners cannot summon their Shardblade until they've said their third oath.
Right.
Skybreakers cannot summon their Shardblade until they've said their third oath, right?
Right.
So does this mean that by the time Shallan was 11, she was already 3 oaths in, or does it just work differently for Lightweavers?
Yeah, that's a good question. I cannot imagine that 11-year-old Shallan had hit the third ideal. There's, like, no way.
Here's the thing, and she's mentioned this herself, is that the Ghostbloods were up in her house, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, and she even mentioned that maybe her family had been, like, being groomed by the Ghostbloods.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So is it possible that she actually had somebody, like, pushing her along, like, causing her to progress to her Lightweaver stuff? Maybe from the Ghostbloods? Maybe, I don't know. The thing is, it's
possible.
I guess I don't want to spend too much time theorizing about this, because I'm sure it's going to be something crazier than I could ever think of that's actually, you know, happened.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll find out probably in not too long, but...
Yeah. So either way, for some reason or another, she seemed to be pretty well along in her light weaving by the time she was 11, which is just wild.
Speaking of, we haven't had any flashbacks so far, have we?
No.
Interesting.
Yep.
I guess we've kind of run out of people for them.
Well, I think it's supposed to be Venli, this book, from what I heard.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that would make sense. Like, yeah.
So I guess we'll find out.
I'm sure we will.
Yep.
The next chapter is Venli. Don't know if it's a flashback or not, but...
I don't know. Well, because there haven't been any flashbacks yet, I kind of expect that they're just going to start in part 2. But I don't know. All right, so Jushu, Shallan, she hangs out with her brothers a little bit. Jushu is still addicted to gambling. Because she changed so much between the time she left them and the time they arrived in Urithiru, her relationship with them is pretty rocky. It's pretty weird because
Yeah.
they don't really know her anymore, almost, right?
Right. She's like way more important than all of them, but back when they hung out, like she was definitely like the youngest kid, you know, like
Yeah.
the baby of the family. So yeah, it's a
And now
weird...
she's like the adult of the family.
Right. It's such a weird dynamic. Yeah.
Yeah, so Jushu is still addicted to gambling, and I don't know. I don't have too much to say about this whole thing. Until that is, Maraise shows up.
And oh boy, whenever he does, the chapter gets substantially more interesting.
I love Maraise. We also
Maraise
did
is
not
so
rate
cool.
him too high. Maybe we should have rated him higher. Who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, let's talk about a couple of things first. First off,
Yeah.
the Ghostbloods have a map of Shadesmar, right? Shallan is thinking about this. This is something that ELA had like written down, like, oh yeah, they had a match. I'll try to sketch what I remember from it, but she's a bad artist, so Shallan doesn't really know much past the fact that the Ghostbloods did have a map of Shadesmar.
Yep.
Also, she goes down to talk to Maraise in the garden, and she mentions that Maraise always knows when he's being approached, even if she's really quiet, right?
Mm-hmm.
Guess who else always knows when they're being approached, John?
Who's that?
People of at least the second heightening, I want to say.
Oh, maybe.
Or was
yeah.
it the third?
Yeah.
Because there's one heightening where you become aware of all living things around you. Anything that holds breath, right?
Yeah. Huh.
So, maybe. Don't know for sure, but maybe.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually, I'm pretty confident. I feel
Yeah,
good about
that makes a lot of
Maraise
sense,
is
yeah.
probably of some low-middle heightening, right?
Right. And we find out pretty immediately during this meeting that he knows a lot about investiture and the Cosmere at large, which is pretty dope.
Okay. We learn that the greater plan of the Ghostbloods, right, is to find a way to distribute the little stormlight, the little balls of investiture, more or less, that exist in on Roshar, right, across the Cosmere.
Yeah.
Because in every world, investiture is useful, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And here they are in little nice bite-sized packages, right?
Yeah.
Not that people will actually be eating them, but you know what I mean.
Right.
So that's kind of their plan. He explains to her, though, that they have a problem. Invested items from one land get heavier as they are taken farther away. Also, he mentions, I think, that even a person who holds too much investiture has like a hard time leaving their system or something like that. Right?
Yeah, I wasn't totally sure what he meant by that.
This kind of makes some sense because I'm wondering, like, okay, well, why is Hoyd walking around with some breath, but not enough to like warp color around him? Because I feel like, and now it turns out, oh well, he can't actually. Like,
it's just too hard.
He said that people with some investiture can travel, but like people who are too invested can't, right? So now, okay, it kind of makes sense to go and grab just a little bit of power from all these different worlds and carry it around with you, right? Also, it is weird to me because I think that Nightblood is probably like uber invested, right? So why does Nightblood not weigh 1 million pounds?
That was exactly my immediate thought. I was like, how did Nightblade just get over here no problem?
Yeah,
but maybe it's different. Like, well, yeah, it can't, because like he's just an orb, more or less, right? He's an object that holds investiture. Like, what makes
me wonder, does Nightblood technically only have like 1 mega breath or something like that? Or I don't know exactly. I'm positive that this is something Brandon Sanderson had thought about, and there is going to be a good reason for this, right?
Right. This does not seem like a thing that Brandon Sanderson would just forget about. He doesn't really do that. Yeah,
it doesn't make sense to me right now, but I'm sure we're going to find out why.
He's good at following his own rules, for sure, so...
All right, Maraise says that he's actually discovered the secret of connection, which he says is, that's what's going to allow him to actually distribute these things across the Cosmere, right?
Yep.
And he spells connection with a capital C. Right. But he says that he cannot put his plan in motion.
Right.
Why not? Kind of implies that Shallan might be able to change that.
Right, yeah.
All right, so we learned that Shallan has been talking with Ja-Anat over the last year. Right, I kind of expected in this book she was going to go hunt Ja-Anat down. No, she's been doing that.
They got a whole line of communication opened up,
and she's been negotiating with Ja-Anat, and Ja-Anat is now willing to send another corrupted Spren, just like the one Renarin has, over to the Ghostbloods. Right. So this is cool because somebody, probably a Ghostblood we're aware of, like Eotl or Maraise, is going to end up as a kind of corrupted Radiant dude, which is dope.
Yeah. I'm super excited to see another one of those. I mean, I know Renarin is his own case in another way, but...
Also, Shallan mentions that Ja-Anat isn't happy with the way Renarin is being treated, which kind of makes it sound like Ja-Anat is like Renarin's patron almost.
Yeah, a little bit.
Like she's like looking out for him, you know?
Right, yeah, seems like it.
Also, we hear that Ayatl is currently away because she has gone to report to their master Thydakar, which is indeed the name we saw up above, so that is the leader of the Ghostbloods.
Yeah.
And then Mraize goes on to talk about Gavilar some more.
Mm-hmm. And
here's a line that really made me happy, John.
Yeah.
He thought he could become like the Heralds.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't I say to you last time that Gavilar's plan might have been to become a Herald or something?
Yep.
Oh, man, I'm good. Woo!
Yep. Oh, thank goodness. That panned out. Yeah, so he, we know that from the prologue for this book that Gavilar was kind of looking into, similar things that Mraize is now looking into, taking things across planets and world hoppy nonsense. So yeah, they kind of talk about that and some of the people that he was meeting with during the night of his assassination.
We learn that Void Light generates it is born on, it initializes on it. What's what I'm looking for, John? Help me.
Finish the sentence.
We learned that Void Light comes from Braze, but I'm looking for another word than comes.
Originates?
Originates, that's it. And the Void Light originates on Braze.
Right.
And that Gavilar was able to bring some Void Light back from Braze, even before the Everstorms began. Mm-hmm. This was the inverse light we saw in those gemstones he had on the table in the prologue.
Mm-hmm.
We also get straight from Mraize that Braze is what you call damnation, he says to Shallan.
Right.
So
which
now we
I
know
think
that
we mentioned with Lucas because he knew that for some reason.
This is something Lucas told us but now it's canon.
Right.
Now it's like in a book.
Yeah.
So Braze is damnation. That's cool. Braze is like literally where the heralds are sent when they die, right? To be tortured.
100%.
So that's interesting that in this world, like Earth and Heaven and Hell are all physical places and they're just planets, right?
Right. Yeah. Which is funny because
cool.
like it, why is Braze the way it is?
Yeah. Also, and this is so dope. This made me jealous, and I want to be a better DM. But
Okay.
Mraize goes on to tell Shallan, "I have a quest for you.
Yeah.
You must go find Ristaris in the fortress city of the Honor Spren. You'll know what to do when you find him. Afterwards, I'll tell you everything you could ever want to know." And I'm like, damn, what a hook, son.
Yeah.
It doesn't get better than that. Oh,
Yeah.
if I could give quests like that to my party, it just sounds cool, right?
It does, yeah. Absolutely.
You must go to the fortress city of the Honor Spren and find a guy, and you'll know what to do. And she's like, no, I won't. And he's like, no, you will.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, oh, it's cool. Like, I'm curious,
Yeah. So now Shallan's got to go full, Oceans mode to, sneak into this place to find this guy and extract him or do something with him.
And I mean, just this thing is where she's like, well, you got any tips for me? And he's like, nah, you're resourceful. And I'm like, damn, I like that too, She is resourceful. Yeah, so it's cool, and wow, I can't wait for the rest of this book now. I feel like, last time we were talking about how this feels like just the first episode of a new season where we have all of our characters in kind of these low stakes scenarios that showcase their skills, and it's just a fun reintroduction.
Right.
But now,
now
we're in the, things are picking up, and now I want to see how Kaladin reacts and what he does next, having been removed from duty. I want to know what happens with Rock. I want to see Shallan go on this cool quest. It's picking up, and I'm getting really into it.
This section really felt like all right, you're caught up, now it's time to get into the book, here's all the things you're looking forward to this. And I mean, Navani with the whole Spren thing, that's a whole plot.
Oh, yeah, I want to know what happens with that. I want to see if Relaine ends up binding that, Spren, Yunfar, whatever its name was.
Yeah, we've set up a lot of threads, a lot of untied ends, as it were.
Yeah, and it's just really cool. Also, John, I've discovered that when I'm reading a physical book, it is much harder to stop reading than it is with, with an audiobook.
Nice.
I find I just want to keep going. Like, it's hard to put it down.
Yeah, I really love the hardcover version. I was thinking to myself, like, man, I don't want to just drop $90 on the hardcover other books, like, just to have the full set. I mean, I'm gonna do that right at some point. And I was like, just ask for them for Christmas gifts, easy.
Oh yeah, bada bing, bada boom.
Right.
I should do that as well.
Yeah. So.
All right.
Very exciting.
And I think that's gonna wrap it up for this episode.
Yeah. That was I felt like a very quick one, but hey.
Felt like a bit of a quickie, but I'm not complaining. No, we're at 50 minutes. This is perfect.
Yeah, so next time read through chapter 19, the finished part 1, you know?
Wow, that's the first time you've ever said that, John.
I know.
Normally, I'm always the one who says that.
I was ready for it. I had the sheet pulled up, which I never do normally. I'm highlighting it as we finish sections because this one isn't color-coded, so.
Yeah, I'm going to have to change the color of that highlight because that is just a little too
aggressive
for me.
All right, I'll fix that.
All right, thanks for watching/listening. Bye-bye.
See you next time.